Well, thank you all for coming today. We appreciate your being here for the announcement of the filing of this bill by Danny Davis and myself. It's well-known fact that the cost of education is climbing and that far too many have the ability to save and pay for college without ending up with a mountain of debt and simply being out of reach for so many. And so today's broken tax code does little to ease that financial burden or provide a sense of security that education will be a reality in the future. As the chair and the co-chair of the Ways and Means Committee on Education Tax Reform Working Group, one of the 11 working groups that were tasked with exploring how to make the tax code simpler and fairer for families, frustration with the tax code was a common theme that we heard. Working with the Joint Committee on Taxation, we learned that currently 15 different tax breaks for education. 4 are designed to help individuals save prior to becoming a student. 9 are available while the student is still in school, and 2 exist for when the student has completed his or her education. It was overwhelming when we had the tax experts explain it. So it was not difficult to imagine how parents try to navigate through it all. And those 90 pages of the IRS instructions would simply just toss up their hands and say, I give up. The work of the two of us during this time, our time together on the Education Tax Reform and Working Group didn't end when we delivered our report to our colleagues. Instead, our desire to provide at least one relief from the frustration led the two of us to continue to work together to see how we could clean up the code and help families struggling to finance education costs. That process has led us to introduce, and we introduced it today, the Student and Family Tax Simplification Act. The legislation consolidates 4 existing education provisions: the Hope Credit, the American Opportunity Tax Credit, or known as the AOTC, the Lifetime Learning Credit, and the tuition deduction into a single, modernized, and strengthened AOTC. Streamlining the number of educational provisions and retooling those that are most effective allows us to simplify the code and reduce some of the confusion that exists today. As a result, the students can spend less time figuring out how to finance the cost of higher education and more time developing the skills they need to succeed in the knowledge-based economy. It ought to be easier for any family to plan, to save, and invest in education, and our bipartisan bill makes common sense reforms to make the tax code simpler and fairer when it comes to helping Americans afford the cost of a college education. And now I turn it over to my colleague, Mr. Davis.